Chapter 11, here goes. Wild Boy ran. In among the sprawl of vans behind the circus, slipping over, staggering up. Wind whipped at his eyes and dried his tears. Caravan doors burst open. Voices rang out, horrified, confused. "What is it? One of the freaks killed the professor, that one with the hair. There, grab it. There's two of them. It's Clarissa and all." Clarissa raced up beside Wild Boy as he hid behind one of the vans. She was breathing hard and shaking her face as pale as snow. "What do we do now?" Close by, a gang of showmen charged past, heading for the big top. "Quick," Wild Boy whispered. As soon as the men had gone, he darted around the side of the van and scrambled breathlessly up the ladder. Clarissa came up after him, and they lay flat against the rain-slicked roof, sides pressed together. Wild Boy could feel her heart beating even harder than his as they listened to the circus crew run past on the path below. And then they heard something else. Dogs coming closer. "Your crazy mother set the hunting dogs on us," Wild Boy gasped. The porters must have given the dogs a smell of the professor's blood, and Wild Boy was covered in the stuff. He bolted upright, rubbing frantically at the blood on his hands, tearing thick clumps of bloody hair from his skin. But there was too much blood, too much hair. They needed to get away from those dogs, but there was no way they could escape on the ground. There had to be another way out. Clarissa was no help. Her gaze was fixed on the big top. She didn't look like she could move, let alone escape. Wild Boy thought about leaving her, but she had helped him escape when she didn't have to, and because of that, she was on the run too. "The roofs," he said. "We can use the caravan roofs." He turned and looked across the roofs of dozens of vans parked behind the big top. There were only a few feet between each. They could use them as stepping stones to reach the edge of the park. Beyond was a street and a muddle of houses. Maybe they could find somewhere there to hide. Behind, the barking grew louder. The dogs raced closer. "You're coming," Wild Boy said. I'm coming." "Then let's go." He ran across the roof and jumped. Thump! He landed heavily on the next caravan, windmilling his arms to stop himself skittering off the edge. He recovered his balance and jumped again, then again, and again, springing over the dark crevices between the vans. Each time he landed, he heard plates smash inside, people crying out in alarm. Thump, thump, thump. Clarissa overtook him in moments, leaping the gaps with ease. "Hurry!" she cried. Ahead, Wild Boy saw carriages on the street at the edge of the park. They were getting closer, but so were the porters. He glimpsed the men as he flew over their heads. Hands snatched at him, fingers swiped. "They're up on the roof," somebody shouted. "Get the dogs over here!" Clarissa landed on the next caravan and stopped. "No," she breathed. One of the porters stood on the next roof, blocking the way. The man had a meat cleaver in his hand and a bad smile on his pock-marked face. "I got him!" he called. Dogs reared at the side of the van, snarling and slavering. "Get back!" Wild Boy yelled at the man. "Get back or I'll tell your wife about your mistress!" The porter and Clarissa stared at him. Only now did Wild Boy understand what he had said. Before he'd even realised, his eyes had sought out clues to use against the men. "Your wedding ring," he said. "See the line where you've taken it off tonight? And that stain on your collar is lipstick. I've seen your wife, Jack. She don't wear lipstick. Let us go and we won't say anything. Ain't that right, Clarissa?" Yeah, that's right." The porter looked at them, dumbfounded. Then, very quietly, he stepped aside. Wild Boy and Clarissa leaped to the next roof and kept going. They could see the edge of the park now, enclosed by a hedge about 30 yards from the last van, and the carriages rattling by on the other side. Lights teased from the houses beyond. They were getting closer. Clarissa jumped from the top of the last van, somersaulted in the air, landed below. "Hurry!" she screamed. But then Wild Boy saw something awful. A porter charged into the caravan below. He was carrying a shotgun. Boom! Wild Boy barely knew what happened next. One moment he was on top of the van, and the next he was sprawled in a pile of straw on the ground. Slowly, his senses came back into focus, and a sharp pain screamed in his shoulder. His coat was torn, and blood flowed from a gash in his arm. Clarissa leaned over him, trying to pull him up. Get up, or I'll leave you. He heard the dogs barking, the circus crew shouting. He had to keep going. Clutching his wound, he staggered after Clarissa towards the hedge. He dived for the first gap he saw and tumbled onto the street. A carriage thundered towards him, passing so close that its wheels brushed the hair on his face. Carriages flew by, packed with people leaving the fair. One of the horses saw Wild Boy and reared in panic. Its coach skidded across the road and slammed into a lamppost. The driver yelled curses, but Wild Boy and Clarissa were already gone. They raced down an alley between the houses and into a dingy scullery yard. Snarls echoed around the walls, as if the dogs were coming from all directions. Wild Boy turned and looked around the houses. He saw high walls, drain pipes, and gutters, kissing gutters above. This place was a climbing frame for someone like Clarissa, but not him, not injured. The idea of going on alone made his stomach churn with fear, but he knew what they had to do. Without him, she could escape. We got to split up, he said. What? No? We don't need to run. You can get us out of this, can't you? You can find clues, prove that we're innocent. They locked tearful, desperate eyes. Wild Boy wondered if it was possible. He wished it was. But he shook the thought away. No one would listen to what he had to say. He was just a freak. They're coming now, he said. You got to run. She didn't move. She was too scared. Wild Boy didn't look at her again, in case he lost the courage to go alone. Instead, he turned and ran in the other direction down another alley, shaking all over from pain and panic. He tried to scramble up a wall, but a bolt of agony shot from his wounded arm. He tumbled down and splashed into a stream of filth that trickled down the alley. Sewage, he muttered. In an instant he knew what to do. He ran on through the alleys, his eyes raking the cobbles until he spotted a brown stream gushing into an open drain. The drain fed into the sewers, and the dogs wouldn't smell him if he was covered in sewage. Tendrils of rotten-smelling gas rose from the depths. But now was no time to be squeamish. Now was the time to survive. He held his breath and dived into the hole. Brown muck sprayed at his face as he slid through the slurry. His cry was cut short by a sudden drop and a splash landing in sludgy water. He came up spitting, swearing, wiping the hairs on his face. He couldn't hear the dogs anymore. Too tired to go on, he leaned his injured shoulder against the sewer wall. His coat was torn and his wound was smeared with filth. He looked away from the infected mess, struggling to stop himself from crying. Don't you cry, don't you bloody cry. But he couldn't hold back the tears. He clamped a hand over his mouth as they escaped in gulping, gasping sobs. His head swam. Terrifying visions loomed from the dark. The hooded man's sinister beaked mask, Professor Wollstonecraft curled up in the mud, and the golden-eyed man warning him, "You are in danger, great danger." Wild Boy forced another step, but his legs buckled and he sank to his knees in the sewage. He reached for the wall, making another effort to walk, but it was too much. He slumped forward into the waters, his long coat splayed across the curdled surface. That is the end of part 1. What I would like you to do, please, is think about the characters that we've met. Somebody who has freckles, somebody who has ginger hair, somebody who doesn't have legs, somebody who is covered in hair, somebody who has a golden eye. And I'd like you to think about how people are different from each other and how we should respect them for who they are and not what they look like. And I would like you to write me something about that, please. Stay tuned. I will be reading part 2 shortly.